The clerk glanced over Briggs' papers. A folded land deed, several worn receipts, and a letter of recommendation from a certain Mr. Gordon Smith, hesitated for a moment, then said, "You'd best speak with Mr. Whitmore." Briggs was a large man, his legs slightly bowed from years in the saddle. His hands were broad and calloused, the knuckles thick as knots in old wood. A nose that had clearly been broken long ago hinted at some forgotten fight. In the soft chairs and polished silence of the bank office, he looked deeply out of place, which only made him seem even grimmer. Briggs removed his hat and slowly turned it in his hands. He began speaking before he had properly looked at the banker. Too many thoughts had been circling in his head on the way there, leaving room for little else. "How do you do, Mr. Whitmore, sir? Name's Briggs. Samuel Briggs." He cleared his throat. "I came about a loan." He slowly turned the hat again in his hands. "I only recently came back to town. Well, came back home, I suppose. Born here originally. Bought myself a piece of land just outside town. Good land. Came with chickens, a couple of cows, and a cornfield." He cleared his throat again. "My folks raised corn, too, back when I was a boy, so the work's familiar enough to me." Before Briggs entered, Whitmore had been sitting behind his desk, sorting through a stack of papers, reading some of them quite carefully. His soft, round face and thinning, curly hair gave him an almost kindly appearance. The round spectacles only added to the general roundness of him. When Briggs entered, Whitmore pushed the spectacles up onto his forehead and offered a polite, professional smile. He patiently waited for Briggs to finish. When the man finally fell silent, Whitmore spoke. "So then, Mr. "Briggs, Samuel Briggs." "Very good, Mr. Briggs. Please have a seat." Briggs lowered himself cautiously into the chair, as though afraid the polished furniture might disapprove of him. Whitmore's smile widened easily across his round face. "So, you purchased land. That is commendable." He folded his hands on the desk. "If you don't mind my asking, I'd like to know the source of your funds. Bankers, you understand, have a habit of asking such questions." "No trouble there, Mr. Whitmore." Briggs nodded. "California. Went looking for gold there. Got lucky." Briggs stood, walked to the desk, and handed Whitmore one of the worn papers. "Bill of sale." "You were a prospector in California?" Whitmore exclaimed. "How interesting." As he spoke, he glanced quickly over the paper. His eyes lingered for a moment, as though trying to remember something. Then he looked up at Briggs more carefully. "Placerville," he said slowly. "You mind near Placerville?" Whitmore leaned back in his chair, surprise brightening his face. "Well now, I'd almost swear we may have known each other back then." Briggs did not answer immediately. His eyes drifted upward for a moment, as though sorting through old memories. "You were near Placerville, sir," he said slowly. "Hold on." He studied Whitmore's round face. You don't look much like a prospector." "You're quite right." A faint smile crossed Whitmore's face. "Digging in the dirt was never my trade. I owned a supplies store." "Oh." Briggs rolled his eyes upward, trying to remember. "Wait a minute, mister. What was the name of your store? I'd wager a nugget we crossed paths there." Whitmore smiled wider. "Whitmore's Prospecting Supply." Briggs stopped turning his hat. "Whitmore's," he muttered. His eyes narrowed. "So you were the one selling us picks and shovels down by the river road." "Exactly right." Whitmore smiled broadly. "Though I was considerably younger then." "That's true enough," Briggs said slowly. "Me too. Bought quite a bit from you. Picks, shovels, a couple wash pans." "When you finally found gold," Whitmore asked, "what was the first thing you did?" Briggs shrugged. "Paid back some money." And, as if answering Whitmore's questioning look, he added, "Before that, I'd borrowed $20 from another fella. Once I found gold, I tracked him down and paid him back." Whitmore raised his eyebrows slightly. "That a condition?" Briggs shook his head. "Mine." Whitmore watched him silently for a moment. "You strike me as a solid man, Mr. Briggs." He paused. "I believe I do remember you. You picked the more expensive shovel. I even remember what you said." Whitmore smiled faintly. "A cheap man pays twice." Briggs shrugged. "Maybe." For a moment, Briggs fell silent. The banker's words stirred far more in his memory than that single moment alone. Back then, he had believed real money came only from a pickaxe in the goldfields. Placerville rose before him again, hot, dusty, noisy with wagons. The street was packed dirt. Mules tied to crooked posts stomped their hooves and flicked their tails. Men walked through the dust with shovels over their shoulders, faces darkened by sun and river mud. He remembered entering that store for the first time. Above the door hung a wooden sign, "Whitmore's Prospecting Supplies." Inside it was cooler and dimmer. The air smelled of iron, sawdust, and coffee. Picks stood along the wall. Shovels hung from beams overhead. Sacks of flour and beans were stacked like rough towers near the back. Men crowded around the counter, arguing loudly about claims and prices. Behind the counter stood a young man in a clean apron. He moved calmly through all the noise, weighing nails, counting coins, handing over tools. Briggs remembered placing a pinch of gold dust onto the counter. "Pick and shovel." The young store owner nodded. "Good choice," he said, taking a shovel down from the beam. "Folks who come here usually need another shovel soon enough." Briggs walked out of the store with the tools over his shoulder. A long line had already formed outside, waiting to buy the very same things. Back then, Briggs thought there was enough gold for everyone. "So then, Mr. Briggs," Whitmore said, business returning to his voice, "how many acres do you have under corn? How much livestock came with the property? And most importantly, what equipment are you planning to purchase?" Briggs shifted slightly in his chair. "About 60 acres altogether. 20 or so could go under corn once the land's worked properly. Rest'll be pasture." He slowly turned his hat in his hands. "Came with 4 cows, some chickens, a pair of oxen, and a decent-sized barn. I've already got my own horse." Briggs cleared his throat. "What I'm wanting is a good iron plow, maybe a cultivator, and one of those new seed drills everybody keeps talking about. Neighbors are starting to get them already. These days, hard work alone won't carry you very far." Whitmore listened without interrupting. Then he pulled a small slate board toward himself and made several quick notes with a pencil. "Iron plow, $15. Cultivator, around $25. Seed drill, those run close to $40. He paused, adding up the figures. "Wagon, another $20 or so, plus harness, chains, and assorted necessities." He looked down at the slate again. "That brings us to roughly $110, Mr. Briggs." Whitmore folded his hands. "And now, tell me, what collateral are you prepared to offer against such a loan? I assume you did not invest all your gold in purchasing the farm?" Briggs inhaled heavily. He remembered the day gold had first flashed in his pan, bright flecks spinning like sparks in the black sand. For a full week he walked through Placerville as though he owned the entire town. Whiskey flowed like a river. Card games blurred into one another. Women smiled at the man with gold dust in his pockets. The money slipped through his fingers nearly as fast as it came. It might all have vanished if he had not one day met a quiet girl from Missouri who looked at him as though he were a complete fool.
By the time he finally came to his senses, the pouch of gold had grown much lighter, though there was still enough left to buy a small farm and the hope of a quieter life. Returning from the memory, Briggs said thoughtfully, "Maybe it was meant to be, us meeting again like this, Mr. Whitmore." Whitmore reached for the small counting frame at the corner of the desk and began moving the beads with practiced motions. "Indeed," he said gently. "And you did a wise thing coming to our bank, Mr. Briggs." He slid another bead aside. "You see, money is rather like tools. Back in Placerville, I sold shovels. A shovel might cost $1, but a man expected to earn much more from the ground with it." He thoughtfully moved several more beads. "Credit works much the same way. If a man borrows wisely, the money can earn more than it costs." Whitmore slid the last bead across, looked up again. "Now then, Mr. Briggs," he said evenly, "your farm is certainly respectable property, but farms do not always yield the harvest their owners hope for." He tapped the pencil lightly against the desk. "Crops depend on weather. Livestock can fall ill. A bank must account for such things. We are not a charitable institution, at least not for the time being." Whitmore turned the slate board toward Briggs. "Against the value of your land, I could comfortably loan around $70. He paused. "If you insist on the full amount, the monthly payment would need to be considerably higher." "I understand," Briggs said slowly, swallowing. He sat in silence for a moment, turning the hat in his hands. "And what would that be per month?" Whitmore moved several beads across the counting frame. "If I loan the full amount," he finally said, "the payment would come to roughly $8 a month." The number settled heavily into Briggs' mind. $8, he repeated dully. "No way to make it less?" Whitmore gave a slight shake of the head. "We take risks as well, Mr. Briggs." He paused briefly. His voice grew firmer. "If payments fall behind by more than 2 months, the farm becomes property of the bank, along with whatever may be on it by then. Standard practice." Briggs stopped turning the hat. "All of it?" "All of it." The two men looked at one another. Briggs slowly rose, stepped to the desk, and glanced over the paper. "You understand what this may lead to, Mr. Briggs?" Whitmore asked calmly. Briggs said nothing. He only nodded. He picked up the pen. For a moment he once again saw the store by the river, shovels hanging from the ceiling, the calm young Whitmore behind the counter, and the long line waiting to buy from him. Back then, Briggs believed all those men had come there for gold. Some truly did find it, but few managed to keep it. Most of it stayed in the hands of the men behind the counters. Briggs looked around the room once with the helpless dignity of a man searching for a way out. There was only the paper. He drew one careful breath, then signed his name.